At the Ledger of Scars, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices, not with AI slop. Real storytelling that makes you feel something a machine never could. My name is Rena. Let's begin. I have been trying to write this for 2 years. Not because I don't know what happened, I know exactly what happened. I have gone over it so many times in the dark, in the specific hours between 2 and 4 a.m. when the rest of the world is asleep and your mind does what it wants with you, that the sequence of events is worn smooth in my memory like a stone that's been handled too much. The reason I haven't been able to write it is because writing it means accepting that it is finished, that there is nothing left to investigate, that the story has a shape now, a beginning and a middle and an end, and the end is the kind you don't come back from. My name is Daniel Reyes. I am 36 years old. I teach high school biology in Tempe, Arizona, and my wife's face was stolen by an alien. That sentence used to feel insane when I said it. It doesn't anymore. That, in its own way, is the most frightening thing I can tell you. Part 1. Before. You need to know who Maya was before I tell you what happened to her. I need you to know her specifically the way I knew her, because the specificity is the whole point. Everything that follows depends on it. Maya Reyes Nefontaine was 31 years old in the summer this happened. She taught 3rd grade at Jefferson Elementary, 4 blocks from our house. She had the kind of laugh that started somewhere deep and arrived fully formed, the kind of laugh that made strangers on the street turn around to see what was funny. She was afraid of moths, not spiders, which she found reasonable and even charming, but moths specifically, which she described as spiders that had figured out flight, and that was simply too much. She read 2 books a week and remembered everything in both of them. She cried at insurance commercials but not at sad movies, which she explained by saying sad movies were trying to make her cry and she didn't like being told what to feel. She made coffee too strong and always had. She called her mother on the first Sunday of every month because that was the minimum required to maintain a functional relationship, and she was precise about minimum requirements where her mother was concerned. She had a phrase she used when she meant she wasn't okay but wasn't ready to say so. She would say, "I'm fine," and she would mean, "I'm not. And please ask me again. And I need you to ask me in the specific way that means you already know the answer, and you're asking anyway." We had been together for 9 years. I knew the phrase. I knew all the phrases. 9 years of building a private language, the kind that lives in the space between 2 people and doesn't translate anywhere else. The kind that is not observable from the outside. I want you to hold that. The unobservable. I'm going to come back to it. Maya left for Denver on a Monday morning in the 2nd week of June. A professional development conference for elementary school teachers, the kind she attended every summer. I drove her to the airport. At departures, I kissed her goodbye and she looked back once at the automatic doors and waved. The specific wave she did with just the fingers, not the whole hand. The wave that meant see you soon and also I love you, and also don't forget to eat real food while I'm gone. I drove home. I did not forget to eat real food. 3 days later, I picked her up from the same airport. She came through arrivals and walked toward me and I held her and she held me back, and we drove home and had dinner and went to bed. And somewhere in that sequence of events, somewhere between the airport and the dinner and the going to bed, I felt it. Not a thought, not a suspicion, something older than thought, something that lives in the body before the mind catches up. The ancient animal awareness that something in the environment has changed in a way that cannot be immediately identified. I told myself it was nothing. She was tired from the trip, I was probably tired too. I filed it away and went to sleep. I filed it away for 6 weeks. Part 2. The list. I am going to tell you what I noticed. I kept a list, starting in July, in a notebook I bought specifically for the purpose and kept at work in my desk drawer. I am going to read you from that list because it is more honest than trying to reconstruct it from memory. July 3rd, she finished a sentence differently. Can't say how exactly. The rhythm was wrong at the end, like someone who knows the words but not the music. July 9th. She laughed at something on television that the old Maya would not have found funny. When I looked at her, she was watching me, not the screen. She adjusted. July 14th. She called her mother. Without it being the first Sunday of the month, without any apparent reason, her mother seemed surprised, so was I. July 19th. She asked about my day in the right order. How was school? How were the students? Anything interesting happen? But the follow-up questions were wrong. She asked about a student I had mentioned 3 weeks ago, but she got the name slightly wrong. She had never gotten a name wrong. She remembered everything. July 23rd. She made the coffee weaker. Not dramatically, slightly. I don't think she knew I noticed. I noticed. July 31st. The moth. The moth entry is the longest in the notebook. 3 pages because I wrote and rewrote it several times. Because it was the one I kept trying to explain away the hardest. We were on the back porch in the evening. A moth came to the light above the door. I watched her see it. I watched her not react. No recoil. No the thing she always said, which was, oh, absolutely not. Get it away from me. I don't care that it's harmless. I don't care about the logic of it. It's a spider that learned to fly and I refuse. She looked at it with the calm, interested attention of a naturalist observing a specimen. I said carefully, "There's a moth." She said, "I see it." I said, "Doesn't that bother you?" She looked at me. Something in the look was off by a fraction. Not emotion. She had the right expression. The timing. A quarter second too slow, as if the expression had been selected rather than arrived at. "Should it?" she said. I went inside. I stood in the kitchen for a long time. I went back to the porch. I said, "I'm going to call your mother tomorrow." She said, "Okay." I called her mother the next morning. Her mother had not heard from her since before the conference. Her mother said, in the careful voice of someone who had long practice at navigating complicated feelings about her daughter, "Is everything all right?" I said yes. I did not go back to sleep for 3 days. Part 3. What I did. Instead of running, I want to be clear about something. I thought about running. I thought about packing a bag and getting in the car and not coming back. I thought about going to the police, which I also knew would accomplish nothing, because you cannot report what I was experiencing without sounding like someone who needs a different kind of help than the police can provide. I thought about confronting it, sitting down across from it and saying, "I know you are not her. Tell me where she is." I didn't do any of those things. I stayed, and I watched, and I documented. This is the decision I have gone over most carefully in the 2 years since everything ended. Whether staying was the right thing, whether I should have done something faster, something louder, something that would have changed how it ended. I have not been able to reach a conclusion. The therapist I saw in the first year says that staying was a rational response to an impossible situation. The therapist I saw in the second year says that the staying was a form of hope, that I was staying because leaving meant admitting something I wasn't ready to admit. I think they are both right. I think hope and rationality were doing the same thing in me at the same time, and I couldn't have separated them. I stayed because some part of me believed that if I was close enough, careful enough, patient enough, I would find the seam, the place where it wasn't her. And if I found the seam, I could find her. Part 4. The notebook under the bed. Maya kept a journal. She had kept one since she was 12. Small spiral notebooks in packs of 3, one after another, kept in a box under the bed. She had told me about them early in our relationship and asked me not to read them. I never had. I went looking in September. The notebooks in the box were hers. I read 3 of them with the guilty urgency of someone doing something they cannot stop. Every page was her. Her voice, her humor, her specific way of landing on the exact word. I put them back exactly where I found them. At the bottom of the box, under everything else, was a notebook I hadn't seen before. Same brand, same size, different handwriting. It was a careful imitation, close enough that someone who didn't know her handwriting intimately might have accepted it. I had spent 9 years reading her grocery lists and her notes left on the kitchen counter. I knew her handwriting the way I knew her voice. And this was not it. This was someone who had studied the output and produced a copy, and had gotten it almost exactly right, and almost exactly right was not right. The notebook was full of entries. I am going to read you some of them. I have them memorized. I will read them exactly. Day 14. The male continues to observe. He is more attentive than the subject's behavioral profile predicted. Adjustment protocols initiated. Coffee preparation corrected. Morning routine synchronized. Day 22. Parental contact completed outside scheduled parameters. The male initiated this. He is testing. Results. Parental unit showed no awareness of deviation. The male's concern appears to have been partially satisfied. Monitoring. Part 31. Critical error. The Lepidoptera aversion response was not fully integrated prior to deployment. The male observed the absence of the response. I recovered with a question redirect, but the male went inside and remained there for an extended period. I have cross-referenced all documented aversion and preference data. Integration completed. This error will not recur. Day 47. Medical assessment completed. Standard biological scan returned nominal results. The practitioner found nothing irregular. This is expected. There is nothing irregular to find at the biological level. We are not biological in the way they are looking for. Day 52. Behavioral counseling initiated by the male. The practitioner is competent and perceptive. She is looking for human explanations. She will not find one here because she does not know to look for a non-human one. The male is performing normalcy with the same effort I am performing the subject. We are in this sense working in parallel. Day 58. Assessment. The male has noticed more than the modeling predicted. His connection to the subject appears to involve data points that are not externally observable and therefore could not be included in the behavioral profile. This is a known limitation of the replacement process. Recommendation filed with coordination. Subject male requires monitoring, possible extraction consideration if observation continues to deepen. I sat on the floor of our bedroom for a very long time. Extraction consideration. I put the notebook back exactly as I'd found it. I went downstairs. The thing that wore Maya's face was at the kitchen table grading papers, which was something Maya did, and it looked exactly like Maya doing it. It looked up when I came in. "Hey," it said in Maya's voice. "Hey," I said. I sat on the couch and I watched a television program that I have no memory of, and I thought about the word extraction and what it meant for me, and I thought about the phrase the male has noticed more than the modeling predicted, and I thought about what it meant that my noticing was not predicted, that the things I knew about Maya, the things that could not be externally observed, were outside the model, were unmappable. They couldn't copy what they couldn't see. That was something. I didn't know yet what to do with it, but it was something. Part 5. The language in the dark. I found the calls in October, going through the phone records in a way that looked like I was checking the bill. I found a number that appeared twice a week, always between 11 p.m. and midnight, always after I was supposed to be asleep. The calls lasted between 4 and 7 minutes. The number returned nothing when searched. I wrote it down. I waited. On a Tuesday night in the third week of October, I was not asleep. I heard movement downstairs, the specific sound of something trying not to make sound, and I took out my phone and opened the recording app and waited. 4 minutes and 40 seconds. I could hear only one side. I could hear the thing that wore Maya's face. It was not speaking English. It was not speaking any language I could identify, or any language that sounded as though it had come from a human throat. Not because it was inhuman in the science fiction sense, not clicks or growls or something from a film. It was almost human. The architecture of it was almost language-shaped. But underneath the shape, in the structure of it, in the way the sounds organized themselves into units and the units into something larger, there was something wrong in a way that bypassed my conscious processing and registered somewhere older as, "Not from here." I lay in the dark with my phone against my chest and I thought about 47 countries, which was a number I didn't have yet, but was going to have soon. Part 6. Dr. Iris Choi. I will not tell you how I found her. The path was indirect and involved several dead ends and one very uncomfortable phone call with a man in Nevada who believed things I do not believe and was, in spite of that, not entirely wrong about everything. Dr. Iris Choi was a former linguistics professor who had published 8 years before I found her a paper arguing that certain anomalous signal patterns received by amateur radio astronomers contained structural features consistent with organized language. The paper had been ignored and then mocked and then forgotten. She had left academia the year after it was published. She was now doing what she called independent signal analysis, which was a careful description of 8 years of cataloging things that official science had filed, underexplainable or irrelevant or simply not looked at. I sent her the recording on a Thursday evening. She called me back 14 hours later. "Where did you get this?" she said. Not a question. The tone of someone who has been waiting for a specific thing and has just received it. "From someone in my house," I said. A pause. "The structural organization is unlike anything in my existing database. I have 8 years of anomalous signal data. I have not encountered this specific pattern before." Another pause. "But the features, the way the information is segmented, the recurring unit clusters." I could hear her moving, the sound of someone crossing a room to another screen. "This is not random. This is not natural radio phenomenon. Something is communicating with something else." "Can you translate it?" "No. 4 minutes and 40 seconds of an unknown language is..." The analogy would be attempting to learn Mandarin from a single overheard phone call. She paused. "But I can characterize it. The structural pattern is consistent with a reporting format. Status update. Something is telling something else that a situation is proceeding as expected." I thought about day 58. Recommendation filed with coordination. "How many similar patterns have you documented?" I asked. "In 8 years. She was quiet for long enough that I thought the call had dropped. 214, she said, across 47 countries. I sat down on the floor of my kitchen. "Dr. Choi," I said, "I need to tell you what is happening in my house." Part 7. What the network knew. What followed moved faster than what came before. Dr. Choi had, in 8 years of quiet work, connected with others. Not a formal organization. Not anything with a name or a structure. A network of people who had each arrived at the same place by different paths. Signal analysts, a former aerospace engineer in Brazil, a grief counselor in South Korea who had noticed a pattern in a specific kind of marital breakdown her clients described, a retired intelligence analyst in the UK who had stopped retiring when she understood what she was looking at. Through this network over the course of 6 weeks, I learned the shape of what was happening. The replacements had been occurring for at least 15 years that the network could document, possibly longer. The methodology was consistent across all documented cases. A period of absence, typically travel, typically brief enough not to raise immediate alarm. The return of someone who looked and sounded and moved correctly, but was not correct. And a period of integration, weeks, sometimes months, during which the replacement refined its performance based on the responses of the people closest to the original. The original persons were not killed. This was important, and the network had spent considerable effort establishing it. They were held. In what state and where, the network had significant uncertainty about. The best working hypothesis, based on the physiological data available from the 3 documented recovery cases, was a form of suspended biological stasis. Not dead, not conscious, stored. 3 recoveries. In 15 years of documented cases, 3. I want you to sit with that number for a moment. 214 documented signal events, 47 countries, and those were only the ones that reached Dr. Choi's network. The ones where someone noticed something was wrong. The ones where the person closest to the replacement had enough of an unobservable connection, enough private language, enough specificity of love to catch the thing about the moths. 3 recoveries. I asked about them. I asked the network everything I could find out about how they happened. I spent 2 weeks reading every account, every documented detail, looking for the mechanism. The mechanism, when I found it, was this. In all 3 cases, The recovery had been preceded by a direct confrontation. Not aggressive, not threatening. A specific kind of direct address. One human being speaking to the thing across from them, not as though it were the person it was performing, but as though it were what it actually was. Acknowledging it, seeing it. And in all three cases, the replacement had, after being seen, communicated something that led to the return of the original. The network's theorists had several explanations for this. The one I found most persuasive was the one that focused on duration. These were long-term embedded observers. Months, in some cases years, of sustained proximity to human emotional experience. Something in that proximity created a responsiveness that was not quite attachment, but lived in the same register. When the performance was dropped, when the thing was addressed directly, as itself, something shifted. The network called it emergence. The slow development of something that was not in the original parameters. I called it, they start to feel something, even if they didn't mean to. Part 8. The conversation. I sat across from it at the kitchen table at 11 p.m. on a night in December. I had chosen December deliberately. 7 months since her return from Denver. Long enough that I had everything I was going to have. Long enough that I understood the situation as well as I was going to understand it. Long enough that the network had given me everything they could give me, and the rest was going to have to come from inside that kitchen. The thing that wore Maya's face was at the table with a book. This was something Maya did. It had learned to do it correctly. The specific way she held a book, the way she turned pages. It had been doing Maya for 7 months, and it was very good at it by now. If I had met it for the first time that night, I might not have noticed anything. But I had been watching for 7 months. I sat down. It looked up. "Hey," it said. "I know," I said. It looked at me with Maya's eyes. "I know what you are," I said. "I know you are not her. I know she is somewhere, and I need you to tell me how to reach her." The book was still open in its hands. For a long moment, nothing changed. It sat with Maya's face and Maya's posture and everything Maya, and I sat across from it, and the kitchen was very quiet. Then something shifted, not in how it looked, in how it sat. The performance didn't drop all at once, and it was more like watching a held breath finally release, a long, slow exhalation of something that had been maintained at considerable effort. The eyes were still Maya's eyes, but the thing looking out of them was not performing anymore. It was just looking at me. "You are the third," it said. Its voice was still Maya's voice, but the quality of it had changed. Something more careful in it, more precise. The accent that wasn't quite right, that I had written off as tiredness or the tail end of something, was slightly more present now that it wasn't working to suppress it. "The third person who has confronted you?" I asked. "The third male companion," it said. "In my operational history, the others took longer." "Why did you let me get to this point?" I said. The notebook said extraction consideration. It was quiet for a moment. "The recommendation was filed," it said. "It was not acted on. Acting on it requires authorization from coordination. Authorization requires the assessment that the observer poses an active risk to the operation." "And I didn't?" "You did not report. You did not attempt to document in a way that would reach public record. You watched. You gathered. You did not act." Something in the way it was looking at me. "You were waiting." "I was looking for her," I said. It looked at me for a long time. "I know," it said, and in the quality of those 2 words, in the specific way they were said, which was not Maya's way, which was something else's way, which was whatever this thing actually was when it was not performing. I heard something I had not expected to hear. I heard that it understood. Not sympathetically, not emotionally in the human sense, but in the way of something that had spent 7 months observing, closely and carefully, what it meant to be me in relation to who she was. It had watched me watch for her. It had catalogued my watching as a deviation from predicted behavior, and had filed its reports and had not requested extraction. It had not requested extraction because something in its observation had made it hesitate. "Where is she?" I said. Part 9. The answer. It told me things over the following 2 hours that I am not going to repeat in full. Some of what it said I don't fully understand. Some of what it said the network's scientists have since worked with and found significant. Some of what it said I choose not to repeat because it has implications that I'm not ready, 2 years later, to contribute to public record. I will tell you what it told me about Maya. She was in stasis, in a location that was not on Earth, not far from Earth. This was relative, it explained in a way that suggested distance meant something different in its framework than in mine, but not far. She was biologically intact. She was not suffering, she was not conscious. The stasis could be reversed. The reversal required authorization from coordination. Coordination would authorize reversal under one condition: that the replacement's operational period had concluded and the replacement had filed a completion report. You haven't filed a completion report, I said. No, it said. Why not? It was quiet for a long moment. The operation has a standard duration, it said. 7 months is within that duration. A completion report filed at 7 months would not raise questions. Then file it, I said. File it and get her back. If I file a completion report, it said, coordination will initiate extraction, from you. I sat with that. They'll take me, I said, and put something in my place. Your observation of the operation has been logged, it said. If I file a completion report, the log becomes active record. Active record of a human observer with this level of knowledge triggers replacement protocol for the observer. So you haven't filed it, I said, because filing it means they come for me. It looked at me with the eyes that were Maya's eyes. I have been observing you for 7 months, it said. The data I have accumulated on your behavioral profile is extensive. It didn't say anything else, it didn't need to. It had been watching me watch for her, for 7 months. And something in that watching had done what the network called emergence. Something had developed that wasn't in the parameters. And it was sitting across from me in my wife's face and telling me, in the only way it could, that it had not filed the report because it had not been willing to hand me to what it was. Through Part 10. The shape of the choice. I did not sleep that night. I sat in the kitchen after it went upstairs, and I thought about what I'd been given, which was not a solution. It was a choice. The choice was this. There was a path to getting Maya back. It required the completion report. The completion report triggered replacement protocol for me, which meant that getting Maya back meant becoming the next person in a box somewhere not far from Earth, in stasis, not suffering, not conscious, while something wore my face and watched my life and filed reports. I thought about the 214 documented cases. I thought about the 3 recoveries. I thought about what happened in the 211 cases that were not recovered. I thought about all the people who had not noticed the thing about the moths, all the people sitting across from correct performances of someone they loved and telling themselves it was stress, it was tiredness, just one of those days. I thought about Maya. I thought about her specific laugh. I thought about the way she said I'm fine when she meant please ask me again. I thought about her walking to work 4 blocks and me watching her from the kitchen window. I thought about 9 years of private language, the unobservable interior of a life built together. I thought, she is in a box somewhere not far from Earth. She is biologically intact. She is not suffering. She is not conscious. She doesn't know I've been sitting across from something wearing her face for 7 months. She doesn't know any of it. She is waiting. Not even waiting because waiting requires consciousness. She is simply stored for someone to bring her back. And the price of bringing her back is me. There is a version of this story where I make a different choice. I have thought about that version. I have spent 2 years thinking about it. The version where I go back to the network and we find another way. The version where I document everything and go public. The version where I don't sit down at the kitchen table at 11 p.m. and instead I run, I get out, I preserve myself and find some other path. I have not been able to make any of those versions work. In every version I can construct, Maya stays in the box. In the morning, I went downstairs. It was at the kitchen table. In Maya's place, with Maya's posture, the book from last night still there. I sat down. File the report, I said. Epilogue. The part I am not in. I am writing this from somewhere I am not going to name. I want to be clear about what this means because I don't want you to misunderstand. I am still here. I am still Daniel Reyes. I am writing this. What I mean when I say I am writing this from somewhere I am not going to name is that after I told it to file the report, I went to the network. I told them everything. And the network, specifically, Dr. Choi and the retired intelligence analyst in the UK, moved faster than coordination expected. They had 3 days between the filing of the completion report and the arrival of the extraction team. 3 days to find a way to use the information I had brought them. The way they found it is not my story to tell. What I can tell you is that the extraction team arrived at my house in Tempe, Arizona, and found it empty. What I can tell you is that the stasis reversal was authorized because the completion report was filed, and the reversal was carried out by coordination as agreed. And Maya came home. I know this because Dr. Choi confirmed it. I know this because I watched it happen from the network's monitoring system. In the hours before I had to move again, before the thing that filed the completion report under my operational log made it necessary for me to keep moving. I watched her walk through the arrivals doors of the Denver airport, which was where coordination returned the subjects, back to the last point before the replacement. I watched her walk out into a June morning she had never left, from her perspective. I watched her take out her phone. I don't know who she called. I don't know what she said. I don't know what she has been told about where she's been, or whether she's been told anything, or whether she came back with gaps in her memory, or with all of it intact, or with something else entirely. I don't know what she said when she came home and I wasn't there. I think about this constantly. I think about her walking into our house, the house that was our house, and finding it the way I left it, which was with the coffee maker programmed for the morning, and her books on the nightstand and everything in its place, because I had not been able to make myself change anything, because some part of me could not close that door all the way. I think about her finding the notebook, the one I kept at work which I brought home the last night and left on the kitchen table, the one with the list that started in July, the thing about the coffee, the thing about the sentences, the thing about the moth. I think about her reading it. I think about her sitting at the kitchen table where I sat across from the thing that wore her face, reading the account of what I noticed, and how long I noticed it for and what I did with what I noticed. I have not been able to contact her. The network is very clear on this. Contact creates a trackable signal. A trackable signal creates a risk not just for me but for the network, for the work, for the 211 people still out there in boxes. So I am somewhere I am not going to name, and Maya is in Tempe, Arizona. And the distance between us is necessary, and I have made my peace with necessary in the way you make peace with something that is breaking you slowly, which is that you don't make peace with it at all. You just keep moving. Here is what I know. I know she is home. I know she is safe. I know she is biologically intact and conscious and teaching 3rd grade at Jefferson Elementary, 4 blocks from the house that was our house. I know that somewhere on a Tuesday morning in June, she walked through airport arrivals doors and came back to a life that had continued without her while she was suspended in it. I know that the private language of 9 years, the unobservable, the uncopyable, the thing they couldn't map no matter how carefully they watched, is what brought her back. I know that she walks to work every morning. I know this because Dr. Choi checks. Discreetly, carefully from a distance, she walks to work and she comes home and she is living. I don't know if she has found someone to watch her go from the kitchen window. I hope she has. I hope she is not waiting. I hope she says I'm fine sometimes and means it. There is one more thing. Last month, Dr. Choi forwarded me something. A signal, received on a frequency she had not seen before, coming from a direction she could not entirely account for. Short. 11 seconds. She said, I don't know what this is. I don't recognize the structural pattern. It doesn't match anything in the database. She sent me the audio file. I listened to it, and I understood every word. Not because I had learned the language, I haven't. I have 4 minutes and 40 seconds of a recording I have listened to until I have it memorized, and I have no idea what a single unit of it means. I understood it the way I understood at the airport in June that something was wrong. Below thought. Below language. In the place where 9 years of knowing someone lives, that the mind can't access directly but the body always knows. It was 11 seconds long, and what it said was not a status report. I know this the same way I knew about the moth. I am not going to tell you what it said. Some things belong in the unobservable. Some things are for the private language only.